Hey, if it makes you feel good to cosplay as revolutionaries, knock yourself out, burn yourself out. Just don't drag Gaza into it. Also, throwing stuff on paintings is just stupid.
Bill Maher recently lit up the cultural debate, calling out activists who constantly criticize America while still choosing to live here. His point? If you think this country is irredeemable, yet never consider leaving, maybe it's not as bad as you say. Maher's critique wasn't just sharp, it was funny, honest, and refreshing in a time where calling out contradictions is rare.
Tell the people who block traffic in the name of a cause, no one likes you. And you're probably hurting your cause. In case you haven't seen what's going on lately, activists for ending the war in Gaza have taken to gathering on roads and bridges and stopping commuters from crossing. It happened last week in New York and San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle. They also blocked traffic here on the 405, but no one knows.
He started by taking aim at disruptive protests, where activists block roads to force their message. Maher highlighted the absurdity. Everyday people, parents, workers, students, end up paying the price. They're just trying to get to school, work, or appointments, yet entire cities get shut down. Maher's humor made it clear. Protesting is one thing, punishing regular citizens is another.
This was this, that you have to be pretty dumb to think that the way to bring people around to your point of view is to make them late to pick up their kids from daycare. And that's what most normies are thinking. I have a kid. I have a job, and yes, I'm sure there are injustices on both sides in the Middle East, as there are injustices all over the world, but I'm going to be late for work, something you protesters on the bridge seem to have the luxury of not having to worry about, which seems kind of privilegey.
Then came the bigger truth. Most Americans aren't glued to global hashtags. They're focused on paying bills, filling the tank, and keeping life moving. That doesn't mean they don't care about the world, but survival takes priority. Maher nailed the point. The very roads being blocked are the same roads people need to earn a living. In that light, performative protests look less like activism and more like misplaced frustration.
Hands to the street, because your hands don't have to do any work today. I'm not saying there aren't sincere passions about Gaza, especially among people from the region, but social justice warriors, for a lot of them, it seems like it's more about the warrioring than about whatever the cause is. If you really cared about apartheid so much, which Israel does not actually practice, Arabs there vote, they serve in parliament, they sit on the judiciary, wouldn't you start with this? With the hundreds of millions of women in the world who live under a true apartheid, a gender apartheid of the most brutal kind? I'll wait.
Maher also pointed out the selective outrage. Some activists focus on conflict abroad while ignoring serious human rights issues in other regions, like the treatment of women under restrictive regimes. If the goal is truly equality, why not address those realities too? The silence is telling, and Maher didn't let it slide.
Speaking truth to power, or do you just think you look cool in a keffiyeh? Which is really just the new Che Guevara t-shirt. Another historical figure you never researched and so think is a hero, but was actually a sadistic, racist monster fighting for communism, the worst form of government ever. But these are small matters.
He also skewered the obsession with slogans, flags, and t-shirts. Too often, activism gets reduced to style over substance. People post images or wear symbols without understanding the history behind them. Sometimes those very symbols represent oppression or violence, but on social media, context doesn't matter. Only the photo does. Maher called it what it is. Activism without understanding is more cosplay than cause.
Activism merges with narcissism. Less about the cause and more about me. Look at me. Watch me. And if you like the way I'm fighting injustice, remember to like and subscribe.
Maher is dead on. When you peel back the layers, so many of today's so-called activists aren't motivated by principle or conviction. They're driven by ego. It's about attention, validation, and, for some, a shot at quick money through their social media platforms. And honestly, I'll never understand why people line up behind slogans, chants, or figures they can't even explain. It isn't about belief, it's about branding. Every march becomes a stage, every protest a selfie opportunity, every slogan a hashtag meant to rack up likes. Their sacrifice is non-existent, but their need for recognition is endless. The cause itself is just a backdrop. What matters most is staying in the spotlight, building an online following, and chasing viral fame. Maher ripped away the curtain and showed the reality. This isn't activism, it's theater. At the end of the day, it's not about fixing problems. It's about clicks, attention, and cash.
Sad, confused man even lit himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy, and in his last Facebook post he said, "Many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery?" Interesting cocktail question, sir, and I guess the right answer is kill myself. But it wouldn't have actually fixed the problem if General Ulysses S. Grant had immolated himself and his last words were, "Hey Lincoln, are you using that law?"
Maher also highlighted the sheer absurdity of the woke mob's favorite tricks. Their so-called statements always come in the form of stunts, burning flags, torching effigies, gluing themselves to the road, and staging chaotic scenes. It might look noble to their followers online, but when the smoke clears and the cameras stop rolling, what has changed? Nothing. Policies stay the same. Communities stay the same. And the people they claim to represent? They're no closer to justice than before. Maher cut through the noise with the obvious truth. If these activists were serious, they would stop setting fires and start setting goals. They would trade theatrics for strategy, viral clips for real solutions. Change doesn't come from stage outrage. It comes from sustained effort and sacrifice. Anything less is just empty showmanship dressed up as activism.
How sad it is that someone would take their own life for any reason, but maybe from now on, before anyone commits an act of civil disobedience, they should ask themselves a few questions like, is the most important thing in my life something I hadn't heard of 6 months ago? Do I even know? Do I even know what the fuck I'm talking about? Am I really here for the cause, or is the cause here to bring you me?
And here's the part that gets me every time. So many of these protesters don't even understand the issues they're supposedly fighting for. I've met people on the streets holding signs they clearly didn't write, chanting words they don't even fully understand. One example sticks with me. A protester boldly claimed that anyone could instantly decide to switch genders as casually as changing a shirt. But when asked to explain the logic behind that claim, they completely collapsed. No reasoning, no substance, just stammering and repeating slogans they picked up online. That's the hollow core Maher points out. Activism without knowledge. These people aren't driven by personal conviction or deep understanding. They're swept along by peer pressure and the desire to fit in. But activism without substance isn't noble, it's hollow theater. And eventually, theater falls apart under its own emptiness. Maher's critique is brutal but accurate. Passion without knowledge is nothing but noise.
Feel good to cosplay as revolutionaries, knock yourself out, burn yourself out. Just don't drag Gaza into it. Also, throwing stuff on paintings is just stupid.
He called out another disturbing trend, attacks on priceless works of art. Some activists have damaged cultural treasures in the name of awareness. But instead of sparking meaningful debate, it sparks outrage. People see it as destruction, not change. Maher reminded his audience, cultural vandalism isn't activism. It's a distraction that erodes shared history.
Potatoes on a Monet and thinks, he's got a point, I should recycle my cans. Last week, Google employees staged the sit-in to protest their company doing business with Israel. Their t-shirt said, Googlers against genocide, but they could have just as well said, look at me, see me. And Google did see them to the door.
By the end, Maher's critique was crystal clear. Many of these protests are more about performance than progress. They create noise, but not solutions. Meanwhile, everyday Americans just want to live their lives, work hard, and provide for their families. Real activism, Maher concluded, doesn't come from hashtags or theatrics. It comes from knowledge, responsibility, and genuine commitment. Anything less is just a performance. And that wraps today's video. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Bill Maher's takedown, hit the like button, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.